Dear friends, we are gathered here today to pay tribute to and commemorate the life of a great man. Nelson Mandela led a singular life of sacrifice, dignity, and political genius. His struggle for freedom and justice brought about the end of one of the great evils of modern times. He held his country together when it threatened to break apart. And as he moved his nation towards justice, he inspired the world with his strength and compassion. In him, we celebrate a courageous champion of peace, a clear moral compass, and a leader of unparalleled vision. The promise of visionary leadership is not, however, the most important lesson that Madiba leaves us with. In fact, it is arguably the opposite. At any point, Madiba could have made the struggle and the victory over apartheid about himself. But he rejected the rule of the big man in favor of commitment to establishing lasting democratic institutions. He invested his authority and energy in building a party, a state, and a rule of law that was greater than any individual. And by stepping down after one term in office, he set an example that too few of his peers on the continent have had the courage to follow. For my generation of Africans, this was a particular and an exceptional example. I remember clearly the sense of optimism and excitement which accompanied our independence struggles half a century ago. Across the continent, we witnessed the exhilarating possibility of peaceful change and the chance to take our destiny into our own hands. These youthful hopes of self-determination were too often betrayed by decades of misrule and military coups. But Mandela restored our faith in the possibility that we might shape a future worthy of the immense sacrifice of our liberation movements. He showed us what our continent could become, not simply by ending apartheid, but by ending apartheid peacefully through a relentless commitment to dialogue, reconciliation, and power sharing. Ladies and gentlemen and dear friends, Mandela may have been the world's best known and most revered political figure and the most gentle of icons. He was also blessed with mischievous sense of humor and an attitude to power which can only be described as irreverent. As Secretary General, I grew used to being greeted by him with a big smile. Boss, he would call me. He smiled because he was well aware that I did not find boss to be the appropriate title. I would speak to him frequently on the phone and sought his advice on difficult issues and times. His guidance was indispensable and source of encouragement, and which steadied my resolve. Dear friends, Mandela's example is one which all leaders should strive to follow. His legacy, however, is not about finding another Mandela in Africa or elsewhere. Instead, it is for individual men and women, empowered and educated citizens of our world, to take responsibility for our societies. And this The spirit of Ubuntu is perhaps the greatest gift that Nelson Mandela bestows. His recognition that we are all bound together in ways that are invisible to the eye, that there is a oneness to humanity, and that by caring for those around us, we will find the truth in ourselves. Let me end by sharing a story which I believe captures the light in which many of us came to see Madiba. The first meeting of the elders, a group he founded, was held in Ulusaba Game Reserve in 2007. A year later, during a visit to the park, I asked the ranger, "What is the most exciting thing you've ever seen since you took your job at Ulusaba?" What I had in mind were encounters with the big five: elephant, buffalo, leopard, rhino, and lion. Instead, the ranger replied without hesitation, "Madiba. I met him here in Ulusaba." Later, when I went to see Mandela at his home in Johannesburg, I told him that the big five had now become the big six, and that the sixth one was called Madiba. So you can imagine the smile. What a magnificent soul Mandela was. We will miss him deeply. May his soul be blessed and rest in peace. Thank you very much.